Welcome to the Smarter Balanced Assessment webinar, which is being brought to you live from the Los Angeles County Office of Education. My name is Catherine Edwards, your host for today's webinar. The Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium will develop California's next generation assessment system. In this webinar, we'll answer key questions such as, what are the key components of the Smarter Balanced Assessment System? What are the technology requirements? And of most importance, what do you need to do to get ready? With us in the studio is Dr. Vinitha Chandrasekhar, the Educational Technology Coordinator for Long Beach Unified School District. Vinitha is on a team overseeing Smarter Balanced and Common Core implementation district-wide. Thanks for joining us, Vinitha.
Thank you, Catherine, for having me on this show. My role in the Long Beach Unified School District is twofold. One is working with the curriculum office and identifying key components, technology components that are part of the Common Core standards. And the second part is working with the Information Services Office to determine what are some of the infrastructure components that we need to have in place, as well as the devices and also the professional development that will be going into the implementation of the Common Core assessments.
Well, thank you. We're happy to have you here with us. Also joining us via video conference from Sacramento are members of the assessment leadership team from the California Department of Education. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Hello. Okay, from left to right, we have Jose Ortega. Jose, would you let us know what your role is at CDE?
Absolutely, among many. I act as the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium State Readiness Coordinator, as well as the administrator of the Education Technology Office here at the California Department of Education.
Thank you. And next we have Dr. Patrick Traynor. Would you talk briefly about your role at CDE?
Yes, I'm the Director of Assessment Development Administration Division, and our division oversees all state assessments, including the CELT, CST, CMA, CAPA, General Education Development Exam, California High School Proficient Exam, Physical Fitness Test, etc. So pleased to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. And next to Patrick is Dr. Kristen Brown. Kristen, could you tell us what your role is?
Yes, I am the Smarter Balanced State Coordinator for California, and then also the Division Consultant under Patrick Traynor.
And seated at the end, Rodney Okamoto. Rodney, can you tell us what you do?
Yes, I'm a manager in the Technology Services Division at the Department of Education, and I serve on the SBAC Technology Approach National Work Group, along with serving on the SBAC Architecture Review Board.
Okay, so you're quite involved. So you see we have broad representation here today. We have representatives from the California Department of Education who are all involved in very significant ways with Smarter Balanced, and we have a district leader who is on a leadership team involved with planning for the implementation of Smarter Balanced and the Common Core. In terms of my role, I'm a consultant in the Division of Curriculum and Instructional Services, Curriculum Support and Assessment Unit of the Los Angeles County Office of Education. Our division has taken a leadership role in the delivery of professional development on the Common Core state standards and on Smarter Balance. This webinar is designed to be interactive, so we want to hear from you. Please post your questions and comments for our experts in the text box that's at the bottom of the page. There's a section titled Webinar Questions and Comments, so you can post your comments and questions there. So now let's get started with the basics. We'll begin by discussing the purpose and goals of Smarter Balanced, as well as why the work of the consortium may be important to you. As you may know, in August of 2010, California adopted the Common Core state standards, and currently 45 states and 3 territories have adopted these standards. A goal of the standards is to prepare students for college and career readiness. So once the standards were adopted, it became necessary and important to develop a comprehensive an innovative assessment system that would accurately measure student progress toward college and career readiness. To that end, and over a period of time, the state-led Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium emerged. The assessments will be administered to students in grades 3 through 8 and 11 in English Language Arts and Mathematics, and of course, the assessments will be aligned to the Common Core standards. Looking at the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium map, we see that California is one of 25 states in the consortium. Of those 25 states, 21 are governing states, meaning they have voting rights in the decision-making process. That's 1 vote per state. And 4 states serve in an advisory role. You should also know about the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium website. It's located at smarterbalance.org. And this website has timely information and a wide variety of resources. So, Patrick, let's start with you. Would you provide us with an overview of the assessment system and speak in general terms about the interim and the summative assessments that will be given? And you may want to add a comment about the formative tools and processes as well.
Yes, I'd be happy to. The Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium assessments will consist of the formative, interim, and summative assessments, all in an integrated system. The formative assessments will consist of the day-to-day and even minute-to-minute assessment tools that teachers will use inside their classroom to help shape instruction as they're going along. In the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium assessments, they'll have formative assessments online in a digital library that teachers can access inside their classroom, and they can deliver to students to help with instruction, to help check for understanding. These types of assessments are not designed to produce aggregated results that can be disaggregated and compared compared across schools, but these will just help the teacher inside the classroom. Then at the other end, and these assessments are given very, very frequently, but might cover just a very narrow scope of content. At the other end of the spectrum, we have summative assessments, and these assessments are given very infrequently, once a year, and these test the students on their mastery of the standards. And so these test a broad array of content. And in the middle, we have the interim assessments. In the interim assessments, these assessments will be given twice a year, up to twice a year, and they will be on the same scale as the summative assessments. So a teacher and school can know exactly how their students are doing with respect to the end of the year summative assessments. So those are the 3 types of assessments, and I don't know if you have the triangle chart up yet, but we have that shows the relationship of the assessments. We have the summative being given very infrequently, but tests a broad range of content. And then at the bottom we have the formative assessments, and they're given very frequently, but test a very narrow range of content. So that's the relationship of the assessments.
What about the formative tools and processes? And I understand there's going to be a digital library that will be available. How does that fit into this picture?
Yeah, the digital library will be available online, and perhaps Rodney or Jose can speak more to it when they describe their component. But that will be online inside the classroom, and those will be aligned to the Common Core state standards for the teachers to use. And it'll just give quick, timely, immediate feedback to the teacher to help guide instruction as it is being delivered.
Okay, thank you. Another topic that we'll discuss in some detail later in the program is technology, since Smarter Balance will use computer-based testing. We've heard that Smarter Balance will use computer adaptive testing, and I'm wondering, Patrick, if you could talk about that. What is computer adaptive testing, and are there any particular advantages to its use?
Yes, the computer adaptive test, which Smarter Balance is committed to using, will actually unfold the test to the student as it is going along, as the student is taking the test. This is in contrast to the fixed form test that a student takes currently. Our current California Standards test gives every student the same test, and it's delivered by pencil and paper. They take 65 to 75 questions, and everyone takes the same test. It's a very lengthy test. The computer adaptive test will actually adjust the difficulty level of the questions as the student is taking the exam. For example, if a student gets an item correct, that student will be given a more difficult item for the next item. If they get the item incorrect, they'll get an easier question. And so the computer will adapt the difficulty level of the items as the student is taking. So after just a few items, we can get a very precise estimate of how the student is performing. For example, here is a slide that shows an example of a 20-item test. If a student gets the first item correct, the computer will provide a more difficult item. The student gets that item correct, the computer will give them an even more difficult item, and it'll adjust the difficulty level up to a certain point. Then if the student gets it incorrect, they'll get an easier question, and they'll get a scaled score as the student's taking the test. And then towards the very end, we get a very, very precise estimate of how the student's performing. And if you'll notice on this graph, we see the margin of error is very large at the beginning of the assessment because it's just an estimate. But as the difficulty levels of the items are being adjusted, we get an even lower margin of error, and so we know the student's true measure towards the very end of the assessment.
Okay, we're going to move to Vinitha and ask her, when you are thinking about planning for the implementation of Smarter Balanced in your schools and districts, what are some ways in which this new assessment system is going to impact your work and the work of teachers and students?
Catherine, one of the things that we find with the Common Core state standards is it's not the same that we've been doing before. And Patrick talked about that earlier. One of the things that we have to look at is with the Common Core standards and the assessments, what is it that we want the students to be able to do during the summative and during the formative assessments. Based on that, we have to determine what skills they need to have and make sure that we prepare the teachers so that they can integrate it into the classroom. Because this needs to be throughout the year, not just towards the assessment time. Right. So it has to be integrated into regular classroom instruction. So we need to know what the students need to be able to know and be able to do so that we can determine how to kind of support the teachers. We also need to know what kind of infrastructure and support system in terms of technology that we need to have in place, because it needs to be seamless, and students shouldn't have to struggle with the technology during the assessments. It should be like a seamless, effortless endeavor.
Okay, thank you. Viewers, I'd like to ask you, or remind you to please post your questions or comments for our experts in the webinar questions and comments text box at the bottom of the page. And we do have a question. So I'd like to share this question with you that's come in from one of our viewers. Question is, as a principal, we're constantly bombarded with new information. Where can I find more information on the Common Core and on Smarter Balanced in California? And I'm wondering if Kristen could provide some information to that viewer.
Absolutely. The easiest way to get information is to visit our California Department of Education website, and in the search box just put in SBAC and/or Smarter Balanced, and our site will pop up. And on that site, you'll see in the first line there's a place to receive updates where you can just send us an email and you can get updates every Monday on a regular basis. You'll see information on IT readiness tool, presentations, resources, and then if you look at the bottom, there's a link to the Common Core page. So it's all on one page. If you want to just jump to the Common Core, then just put in Common Core or CCSS, and that page will come up.
Okay, thank you, Kristen.
And then also, you have the option of the site that you mentioned earlier. Catherine, is the smarterbalance.org
Right,
page.
right. Now, I want to go back to briefly the conversation that we had on computer adaptive testing. Are there any particular advantages to using computer adaptive? I mean, people may be wondering why computer adaptive. Are there any particular advantages? And Patrick, maybe you could address
Yeah.
that.
Yes, I'd be happy to answer that. For one, you get much quicker results. Instead of waiting several weeks, several months to get results, you could have the results instantaneously for the most part. A much shorter test length, like I alluded to before, instead of taking a 65-item test, you could get a very precise level of performance after even 20 items or less, and with an even increased precision. It's also tailored to the student's ability, so they're not, if they're lower performing than the grade level, they're not bombarded with a series of very difficult questions and having a very laborious test, or at the other end, they're not faced with a lot of overly easy items. The computer adjusts, and we can get a very very precise level at both ends of the spectrum, whereas with a fixed test form we could not. And very much greater security. With a fixed form test, we have the same items, and that it's a lot easier to share answers. A fixed form is changing. A student can't just share answers with the student taking the test after them, because they're going to be getting different tests. And of course, it's using the 21st century technology. We're in the century, right? 21st century. We have 21st century technology. We're taking advantage of it to help all the above, all the other things we mentioned.
Thank you. So, in listening to your response, it's clear that Smarter Balance will differ from the current statewide assessments that we currently give. And as we know, those assessments are primarily multiple choice. We understand that Smarter Balance will use 6 item types, and I'm wondering if Kristen could talk about those item types and possibly give us some examples of technology-enabled and technology-enhanced items that will be used with Smarter Balance.
Absolutely. So we have 6 item types. One is selected response, constructive response, extended response. We have performance tasks that are linked with the summative assessments, technology-enabled and technology-enhanced. And due to time, we're going to go over some of the more exciting ones, the technology-enabled and the technology-enhanced. Both of these item types are closely linked, but there's a few differences. In terms of the enabled, what you're going to see is digital media, where it's linking with video, animation, sound, and interactive tools. So what you have in front of you is the technology-enabled mathematics. And I'm not sure how clear it is, except that I can let you know that you'll see 2 boxes and you can move those around on the grid. And so that's the technology-enabled piece for this item. And then the next item is in English language arts, and basically you're going to listen to a speech from President Kennedy's 1961 inaugural address, and then you're going to write an essay. So you're going to hear it, and then you're going to write an essay in response. So then we move to the technology-enhanced items, and the technology-enhanced items are specialized interaction for responses for the most part. So you'll see in front of you that you have the technology-enhanced item in math. And here what you'll get is let me just move to my slide. You'll get an understanding of the geometric proportion relationships, and you can move the line within the grid. And then the last technology-enhanced item that we have for you is you'll see that this is an English language arts. There's a poem, and you can highlight and actually pull out passages here, and then you would answer whatever the question is at the bottom. And then to all of these, I'd like to at least let you know that there are access to some of these items. We at CDE are working on giving you a link to a whole slew of sample items, but for right now, there's a couple places where you can find some sample items. One is, I told you about going to our CDE site, And we have presentations that will give you a little bit more detail on the sample items. We just sent out an update number 34, that's archived on our Smarter Balance page, that gives you a link to 2 different sets of sample types, where you can find it there. And then also you can go to smarterbalance.org and look at their item writing training guidelines, and you'll see some item types there. But stay tuned for us putting up a link that it will directly connect you with some sample items.
Okay, thank you, Kristen. And one of our viewers just asked, how would you go about finding some of the sample assessment items? So I think you've probably given them some good references. And we will also have some of those references included in the resources section of this webinar. Additionally, interactive sample test items are available at the University of Oregon website, and that's located at uoregon.edu. And Kristen has already mentioned resources available on the Smarter Balance website. And again, we'll provide additional sample items in the resources section of this presentation. Now, we haven't forgotten about you, Jose and Rodney. The technology requirements for Smarter Balance are extremely important, and we'll be back to you in a minute. We have a question from another viewer, and again, I want to remind you to post your questions or comments using the text box at the bottom of the page, and we'll get some answers. So here's the next question. From a technology perspective, does the CDE know if schools are actually prepared for Smarter Balanced implementation? I'm going to turn this time to Vinitha first, and you took part in the Smarter Balanced assessment technology readiness tool. So could you tell us about your participation in that process?
Sure, Catherine. We were part of a pilot that we started in March, April, and we took the technology readiness tool, and then we participated in the full survey that was done later on. And it's basically a survey, and it asks for information on the current status of devices that we have in the schools, what operating systems they have, the processor speeds, the monitor sizes, the display resolutions. It asks about wireless infrastructures. And the other piece it also asks about is the support that we have at the school sites in terms of who's going to be doing the test administration, do we have someone who can provide the technical support? So it covered a large area that we know that going forward into the assessments we need to have in place. Right. And we're hoping that as we complete this and districts across the state complete this, that we get a guidance from CDE and from Smarter Balance as to what we need to have in place as we move forward. Because we need to get this in place, up and running, and getting the students ready for the assessments as soon as possible.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for those insights. Since the Smarter Balanced assessment system is a technology-based system, some of you may be wondering if schools will need lab setups such as the one in this photo. And I'd like to ask Rodney and Jose to talk about the technology requirements. What are the technology requirements, and how were the technology requirements created?
Well, I'll go ahead and answer that. And Vinitha, you did a great job of actually laying the groundwork for this. And as a collaborative effort between Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium and PARC, they developed and deployed this thing that we call the TRT, the Technology Readiness Tool. And it's a survey tool to develop an understanding of where states are and where are schools and districts in terms of what they have, in terms of what kind of technology, what kind of monitors, what kind of network bandwidth they have, what kind of staff they have. And that tool was deployed between March and June. And the data collected was made just this last couple of weeks, and there's going to be 6 data collection windows altogether between now and 2014, 2 per year, one in the spring and one in the fall. And that information that comes in is going to be then informing the development of the assessment system. So people like Rodney and his groups are going to be able to take that information and then be able to do something to develop the specifications. So although we don't have specifications right now to be able to tell us whether someone is completely ready or not, that information that's being gathered by the TRT is going to help develop those specifications, the specs that we call. So in one of the slides, you're going to see that what the information that we gathered from around California, just in this first deployment of the TRT, was that we found about 600,000 devices that were entered into the system in California. That's quite a good number of devices. In terms of how they're run and what they're running on, more likely they're going to be running on Windows XP, a little less Windows 7, and then the Mac's OS and iOS come in on third and fourth. As well as a smattering of other types of operating systems. And then on the next slide, you're going to see that basically there are a good number of desktops available throughout our schools and districts. Being a former principal myself, I know I did not throw anything away until it was time to discontinue its use because it wouldn't run anymore. So we know that there's a lot of legacy systems out there. There's a lot of desktops that were purchased back some time ago, and some are newer. There's some newer laptops and netbooks, and tablets are now beginning to surface, and they're actually making quite a statement in a lot of schools and districts and regions. Thin clients, of course, there's also quite a number of those. But there's the ever-changing landscape of technology is something that schools and districts have to deal with, and something that the Smarter Balanced Consortium, when developing their specifications, are going to have to keep that in mind as well, because the landscape just keeps on changing from day to day.
So I'll go ahead and take over on the school level technology issues. So since the SBAC system will have technology enhanced items, the computer that the student is using will need to be a certain level. So therefore the technology readiness tool became important. One requirement we know about right now is something called a HTML5 capable browser, because with HTML5 browsers you can draw lines on your web page, or you can drag and drop words on the web page, or highlight words on a web page. So that's why an HTML5 browser is required. Along with that, it looks like we're going to have a custom application that has an embedded browser, and that's primarily due to test security. We want to make sure that the application runs in what's called kiosk mode, which means once the test starts in the browser or the application, the student won't be able to break out of the application and go do a Google search, for example, or start a calculator. So when the application runs in kiosk mode, we'll be able to make the test more secure. Also, since an application's involved, schools need some method to efficiently deploy applications out to their devices. So if some schools have to go around manually installing software, that's going to be an issue, because they're going to need to install the Smarter Balanced Assessment software. Also, the assessment will require the device to be able to handle text-to-speech software. So again, you need a certain level of processor and RAM to do that. So on the text-to-speech software, there'll be an option for the student, for example, on a math question, to have the question read to them instead of reading the question in a traditional sense. And also, since we have technology-enabled items such as a movie clip or an audio clip, for example, the President Kennedy's speech, we're going to need sufficient bandwidth to the internet, and also internal network speeds also. And then on the next slide, we have new hardware purchasing guidelines. So in April of this year, Smarter Balance released a document that gave districts some guidelines on what type of hardware would meet minimum specifications from a new hardware purchasing standpoint. And then in June, they updated it slightly. But this information, the link to the new hardware purchasing guidelines is on the CDE Smarter Balance website. And basically, it comes down to if whatever new Windows machine or Mac machine that you would buy today is going to work. From a tablet standpoint, there's a requirement to have a 10-inch display, which could be an issue with some tablets you could buy, for example, 7-inch tablets right now. And also, there's a requirement on the new purchases to run a display resolution of 1024 by 768. So some netbooks don't meet that standard, even a new netbook. Oh, also, I wanted to point out that based on what Jose was talking about on the results of the technology readiness tool, Smarter Balance will come out with minimum system requirements for what they call legacy machines, or machines that you've already purchased, probably the ones that are 3 or 4 years old probably. Will the SBAC system be able to support that? So based on the results of the data that was input into the technology readiness tool, there's some analysis going to be done by SBAC, and they expect right now they're saying the October timeframe to look for minimum specifications for legacy or existing computers.
Thank you, Rodney. And for those of you who are listening out there, you've heard frequent reference to SBAC, which is our short-term terminology for Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium. So that's what that is referring to. So now, Vinitha, listening to the requirements that Rodney described, and now transitioning to the district level, and knowing that you are probably more experienced than most because you participated in the IT readiness pilot. Can you talk about what your district is doing in terms of preparing for Smarter Balanced and looking at the hardware and infrastructure side of the issue?
Definitely. The technology readiness tool, or the TRT as you're calling it, that kind of gave us insight as to what we have right now. And we have a lot of legacy systems, as Jose and Rodney mentioned, and I'm sure we're not the only district with a lot of these legacy systems. But we do know that we need to move forward, and we need to kind of prepare our students and prepare our schools and make sure that the infrastructure is in there. And like I mentioned earlier, it's not just about the end assessment, it's about having the students having access to it on a regular basis so that they're not struggling with the technology during the assessment. So it needs to be an integrated process throughout. So what we're looking at is guidance from what the readiness tools comes out from SBAC as to what is it that we need to have in place and start working as we roll out the Common Core over the next couple of years.
Okay, thank you. So now let's take another question from our audience. And the question is, many of the students at my school are English language learners. What provisions are in Smarter Balance for our students? And the second part of that question, what about other students at our school who are students with special needs? So I'm going to ask someone from CDE to respond to that, addressing the needs of English language learners as well as students with special needs.
So, Catherine, that is forefront on Smarter Balance's mind. And when they were developing the application, a couple of entities are at play here. One is that they have an English language learners advisory group, a students with disabilities advisory group, and that is made up of national experts. They also bring teachers in from the different states in the consortium on different aspects that they're working on. And to date, what you can find on the Smarter Balance website is about 6 different accessibility and accommodation guidelines that are really guiding the development of the items. And all you have to do is just put accessibility and accommodations into the Smarter Balance website. Those will come up. And also they're on our presentations if you want to see. But those are really guiding the work, and the work is continuous because they have to make sure that this flows through the whole development, implementation. So you'll see more coming down the pike, but they have the guidelines up there right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I might add, too, there is the accessibilities and accommodations work group that's working on this very thing. And with the technology, of course, it's going to look a lot different. So there's the thought that, and actually this has been done before, where the accommodations or modifications are actually part of what might be called a personal learning profile that can be enacted before a student even takes the test. So a student will have those accommodations built in, or even modifications built in, as they're taking the test. It might be a simple click on a word to help them translate. That's the equivalent of the translation glossaries. Or if they need a math passage read to them, they'll have that ability to enact those. So of course, like our current guidelines, they need to be regularly used in the classroom for English learners because we do not want them to impede that student's ability to demonstrate their true mastery of the assessment. So that's all, as Kristen said, that those are all in development right now. We're really looking forward to the outcome of that. And of course, we will share the final versions of that once they are finalized.
Okay. Thank you. Something exciting to look forward to. Let's talk about transitioning to Smarter Balanced. As we know, we currently give a multitude of assessments in our California assessment system, including the California Standards Test, the CASE, physical fitness test, to name just a few. But we know that the assessment landscape is changing, and it's changing rapidly with the transition to Smarter Balanced in 2014-15. And many of our teachers and administrators are concerned. So, Patrick, I'd like you to discuss how California will actually make this transition from the current assessment system to Smarter Balanced.
Yes, the recent legislation has modified Ed Code 60604.5, to direct the State Superintendent of Public Instruction to develop a set of recommendations to the state legislature by the fall of this year to develop recommendations based on 16 areas of consideration and a plan for transitioning to a new set of assessments. And really, he is charged with restructuring our assessments in this reauthorization process. I'll just highlight some of the areas of the 16 areas. Of course, one area of consideration is to consider the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium set of assessments. Another, of course, is to produce valid and reliable assessments for every student, including English learners and students with disabilities. Consider using students' primary language in developing assessments. Have a variety of item types, including performance tasks, open-ended responses, and use of 21st century technology. And also minimize testing time as well. And also in grade 4 and above, you not only implement the Common Core, but implement the science standards and history standards as well. And of course, it's really interesting. One of the 16 areas is to consider assessing the student's ability to use 21st century technology in the classroom. Not only use it to demonstrate their mastery, but also they need to be proficient in that technology as well in order to demonstrate that mastery. So we're excited about that. And so we've actually the State Superintendent of Public Instruction is required to reach out to specific stakeholders named in statute, and that includes the State Board of Education, experts in assessing English learners and students with disabilities, and parents, teachers, and university professors, university experts, and higher education experts as well. So we have actually developed an outreach plan that includes reaching out to stakeholders throughout California, everybody, and that's we've held 5 regional meetings throughout California, including San Diego, Fresno, Contra Costa, Sacramento, and Orange County as well. So, and also we have an email, reauthorization at cde.ca.gov. We've received input there. We have a survey that addresses the 16 areas on our website right now as well. And we also have, we've been meeting extensively. We've formed a reauthorization work group that has been addressing each one of these 16 areas in great detail. And so we are gathering information from that. We've also have developed focus groups to get even more specific information on each of these 16 areas as well. So we're using a variety of mechanisms to get input from the field, from all stakeholders, and to inform our superintendent so he can make a very, very informative plan to the state legislature in the fall.
So Patrick, it's clear that decisions are being made now and in the short term. If one of our viewers wants to get involved and wants to provide input, how would they do that? You mentioned a few ways. How can you just specifically tell them, I'm interested in getting involved immediately. What would I do to get involved in this process?
Yes, well, right now, yeah, thank you. Right now, you could just give us your feedback through our reauthorization at cde.ca.gov. And that will give us immediate feedback. You can address any of the 16 areas, and that information will be incorporated into our final results. So anybody can participate. We really encourage people to respond to that and just give us their open-ended input. We will review all of that information. Another way right now, our survey that we have, it closes August 31st. And we've gotten over 1,200 responses so far, and it's very useful information. We're gathering and assimilating that information, and they can do that, get that from our website right now. As Dr. Brown said before, you can just go to our cde.ca.gov website and type in a keyword SBAC. It'll take you to the survey site. You can click on that survey and complete it. It asks some general questions, very quick to fill out, and we'd really appreciate everybody just participating in that. You can go to our final reauthorization work group meeting September 6th, and there will be opportunities for the public to provide their direct input and for the work group to even consider. And so those are 3 areas that are still open to provide input.
Okay.
Catherine, can I just kind of direct folks to where that they can go? So on the Smarter Balance site, those updates that I told you, you're going to see a link that says Smarter Balance updates are archived, right? Archive Smarter Balance updates. On the last 3 updates, there are links to the surveys. Both there's a Spanish version and an English version, and as well as links to the reauthorization site. So they just have to go into those updates and they will get direct links to the survey, or just put in reauthorization in the search engine and that'll come up that way as well.
Okay. Kristen, how do people subscribe to your listserv? I understand that there is a listserv that will provide you with up-to-the-minute information on Smarter Balanced.
And actually, I also want to put in a plug to subscribe to the Common Core State Standards website, and we share information. In terms of the Smarter Balance update, when you put in Smarter Balance and the site comes up, you're going to see the first line says, you just hit a link that says just send us your email, and you are automatically on our list, and you will get the most up-to-date information once a week. And as we're moving towards the implementation of this becomes very important when we're looking at pilot testing and field testing. And then the other is, that's just equally as important, is the Common Core State Standards. And again, if you put CCSS or Common Core State Standards in the search engine, that will take you to their link where you could subscribe to their updates and or go to our update, and we have a link on there. So we're all connected and wanting to really get the information out there.
Okay, thank you. So each of you viewing this webcast may want to consider joining the California Department of Education's Smarter Balanced electronic mailing list by sending a blank email to subscribe-sbac at mlist.cde.ca.gov. We have a couple of additional questions that I'd like to ask at this point. One has come in from the viewer, but also in doing professional development related to Smarter Balanced, I hear this comment frequently, and the comment is related to the reality of Smarter Balance actually occurring. There are a lot of skeptics out there who say, this isn't going to happen, this isn't going to happen by 2014-15. So what would you say to someone who said that to you? Because it's a question that's circulating out there in the field.
Yes, well, first, all these assessments have already been done before. This really isn't anything new. All the companies, the vendors, all of Smarter Balanced, in some fashion has implemented this, has done this before. All the vendors have had experience in doing this before. This is nothing new. We're just regrouping, getting input, and developing a test that's specifically aligned to the Common Core in the manner we want. Computer adaptive technology is not new. Accessibility and accommodations is not new. And so it will be done. And so we're just simply refining it, getting input to develop an assessment that will work. So we are very much looking forward to that. And I appreciate you asking that question so we can perhaps alleviate some concerns.
Okay,
so
thank you. We have another question, and maybe Jose and Rodney may want to consider responding to this. It's a technology question. And the question is, from what I understand, the Common Core state standards will be tied in with technology. What will the Common Core state standards implementation look like in schools without technology? I know that's a tough one.
There is a paper pencil option for the first so many years.
First 3 years.
For the first 3 years, although it's on the state's dime or budget, so that's always an issue. But hopefully those type of schools would have submitted to the technology readiness tool. So I imagine a school with no computers, they need to, I guess, find a computer to do the technology readiness tool. But they need to submit to the technology readiness tool so that, at least from a state level, we'll be able to find those schools that don't have proper technology at this time, so we could regroup and figure out how to help them.
Okay, and Vinitha, from a district perspective, I would imagine you have some schools with lots of technology and some schools that have less. How would you respond to that question that came from a school that has very little technology?
We do have schools that may not be ready for the computer adaptive testing, but we know that it is coming, and we are looking at ways that we can go ahead and get them ready. The infrastructure is important, the devices are important, and that's why we're looking for guidance on where we need to go with all of this. Mm-hmm. We're moving forward in that direction, hoping that we can get all our schools up and ready for the testing.
Another question is how, in view of the fact that some schools have a lot of technology and others don't, do you have anyone here? Do you have any suggestions on funding? How will schools go about getting access to funds to purchase technology they may need?
That's really a tough one, and I can imagine that over the next couple of years, probably the federal government is going to be looking at ways of supporting not only the assessment but the instruction that goes along with that. Mm-hmm. Certainly, we know that there's going to be a lot of development in the area of what we call OER, the instructional materials, for example, that are digital based, and of course that's going to require some additional content being delivered by computers. I imagine that reauthorization is going to resurface that conversation. We know that we've recently lost the Title II Part D ETT funds that came to California. Mm-hmm. But along with the conversation on instruction and the conversation on assessment, I imagine that some of these conversations are going to be happening. Of course, not only at the state level, but also at the federal level.
Can I just chime in? We also have formed a task force, if you will, here to look at this, and this has been ongoing for the last, not your task force, but an additional task force, for the last year, where we're looking at what's out there in terms of grants, what's out there in terms of sustainability issues, for the consortium, for states, what is the state role in the district level. And we reach out to all our advocacy groups. We have monthly meetings with them to get feedback on this. So I think you're going to see this conversation really ramp up, where we're having these discussions to see how that we can roll this out across California.
I just wanted to add, if I could just add, this is a 21st century instruction, regardless of how we assess it, really requires 21st century technology. So we really school can consider that instructional materials. So they could use whatever funding sources they use for instructional materials to use that funding for technology. It's going to support instruction. Whether we're assessing with computers, devices, or not, students should have access to 21st century technology to be competent in the workforce, competent in college, and just to make sure our kids have access to that technology, regardless of whether we implement a technology-based test. So.
Right. Thank you for your comments. And I'm hearing districts talk about ways in which they are getting creative with fundraising to support technology purchases. I know of a district that even passed a bond in order to acquire funds. So there are lots of creative and innovative ways to acquire the funding as well. So panelists, I'd like to ask you if you would make a few closing comments to our viewers, giving them your top suggestion for preparing teachers and students to move into Smarter Balanced implementation in the spring of 2015. So I'd like to start with Vinitha and ask you, if you were, what advice would you give a school or a district to your top of mind advice to get ready for Smarter Balanced?
One of the things that I would say is that things are changing the way learning and teaching and assessments is going to take place. So we need to start preparing right now. We need to start thinking about it. We need to take an active role in this, get involved in the different supports that we have. Funding is a huge issue, so maybe looking for innovative ways of going out and applying for grants, getting different things. So we need to kind of move forward and know that this is happening, this is coming, and we need to make sure that our sites, our teachers, and our students are prepared for the Common Core state standards and the Smarter Balanced assessments.
Okay, thank you. And moving to our panelists at CDE, what advice would each of you give our viewers in terms of preparing for Smarter Balanced?
Yep, I'm going to give you an overview, and everybody can chime in as they see fit. So a couple of things. One is it's very important that we begin talking about the Common Core state standards, because there are still some folks out there that need to be educated at what those are. So go to that site, look at what's being done. And I would say that for Smarter Balance too, that we have a lot of resources, not only about the IT readiness tool, but presentations, resources internally and externally, those updates. Become familiar with what that is, so you have an understanding of Smarter Balance and how it's linked and aligned with the Common Core. And then we also have an integrated action team that has put together an implementation plan. And again, you would just have to go to our site, put in CCSS or Common Core State Standards implementation plan. And there's a whole site that's dedicated to this that will show not only the overall plan, but plans and suggestions for LEAs, what they can do to roll this out in professional development, in Smarter Balance assessments, and the Common Core state standards. So those are the place to start. I know in going out and giving presentations that I found that you really need to start at the basics to get people to understand what's going on with the Common Core and how that they're aligned. So that would be the first place to start.
One concrete thing teachers can do right now, on our website we have a crosswalk between our currently assessed standards, the 1997 adopted standards, and the Common Core standards. So as teachers are teaching the standards as they're being assessed right now, they can see what Common Core standard they are actually teaching to. And as the Common Core gets assessed, they can see how they can adjust their current instruction to reach the entire Common Core standard. So that's one concrete way they can just implement right now to see what they're doing in their current instructional strategies to address the Common Core.
Where can they find that?
That can be right on our website. They could type in crosswalk. It was developed in conjunction with the Sacramento County Office of Education. You can do the Common Core State Standards crosswalk, and it'll come up.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Patrick. That's extremely valuable information. What about Jose and Rodney? Do you have any recommendations from the technology perspective?
Absolutely. In technology, all too often we had a group of technologists sitting at a table, not necessarily talking with the instructional coordinators or the assessment coordinators, and likewise, the instructional coordinators maybe not at the same table with our technologists. This is a great time and a great opportunity to have a team approach to look at what the technology is going to require, what the assessment is going to require, and to have that dialogue so that everyone is prepared to support each other. And that's one of the things that we really supported in looking at technology readiness tool to work as a team, to coordinate the efforts, to coordinate between instruction, assessment, and technology fields come together to have that common dialogue. So that's something that could happen absolutely today, this afternoon, in every school district across the state of California.
Okay, so that's
And I would just want to add that if a district didn't participate in the technology readiness tool for the first data collection window, the system's always open. There's just points in times where they take snapshots of the data. So it's important from the state standpoint to know what type of computers and internet bandwidth is out there at the schools. So I know there's going to be other data collection snapshots, but the system itself is always open. If you don't have a username and password, Jose is the one that provides that. If you go to our website, there's a link on how to contact Jose.
On the Smarter Balance,
on the Smarter
IT
Balance website.
readiness.
So it's important that we know, especially for those schools like you're talking about where there's limited technology, trying to identify those schools and figure out ways to help them.
Okay, thank you. We invite you to further explore the websites and resources highlighted in this webinar. You've heard a lot of URLs mentioned, and again, we do have a resources page that you will be able to access so that you can go back and visit some of these websites and look at some of the resources. You'll find a listing of Common Core and Smarter Balance development opportunities that are provided by LACO, by our Curriculum and Instructional Services Division at the LA County Office of Education at commoncore.laco.edu. We have planned over the course of this academic year a wide array of professional development opportunities related to the Common Core state standards and Smarter Balance. So again, please visit commoncore.laco.edu. In closing, I'd like to share some words of our State Superintendent, Tom Torlakson, regarding the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. And he said, the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium provides a better opportunity to assess our students on 21st century skills with 21st century technology. This is indeed an exciting opportunity to enable our assessment system to assess those critical thinking skills that our educators are teaching. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this webcast. We hope the information provided today will help you prepare to implement Smarter Balance Assessment System in 2014-15. And we hope that this webinar will help you answer the question at that time, yes, we are ready for Smarter Balance. I'm Catherine Edwards. Goodbye.